Hello YouTube, hey, it's Dave here with another Watch Love video, and this time we're going to take a look at the first microbrand watch on the channel. And this one's from Spinnaker. I've been seeing Spinnaker's watches on Instagram and I've been really impressed with them, and so I was very excited when they reached out to invite me to take a look at it. And this is the Spinnaker Bradner automatic. This is the reference SP-5062-03. This is the blue dial. It also comes in a black dial as well as a green dial with a number of strap options. I think they have green strap, red, and a light tan. You know, when they asked me to take a look at the watch and review it, before I even accepted, I wanted to do a little research to make sure that it had some of the basic things that I really think have to be a part of any watch, or it's just not even worth looking at. Those 5 are a stainless steel case with a screw down case back, a sapphire crystal. I think that's absolutely essential. The watch has to have the ability to interchange straps, which this does. It has to have an automatic movement, and this not only has that, but it also has hand winding and hacking as well. And then lastly, it has to have good lume. And so Spinnaker has all the basics. So there's no point in reviewing or recommending a watch that doesn't have those key components. So the Bradner, this is a re-release. The original Bradner had a few concerns that people expressed, and so they did some upgrades to the watch, and so this is the second edition. The bezel is a smoother turning bezel now. There's now anti-reflective coating on the crystal. There's improved lume, and also an increase in water resistance. And this for a price of $285. So already you've got good specs for a watch of that price. And we have a watch here that really would compete with all the entry-level Seikos that I think those of us who love affordable watches really find ourselves drawn to. So this is an option to do something a little bit different. So let's take a look at the watch itself and look at the functions and the details of the watch. First of all, it's a simple 3-hand watch with a beautiful case. This is a compressor style case, meaning that the bezel is internal. Now, a true compressor case, I believe, as you go deeper in a dive, the water pressure around the case itself seals it even further. I don't know that this is designed that way. I'm imagining it's not, but it's inspired by the look of a compressor case. A compressor case has the 2 crowns on the 2 and 4 o'clock position, and the bezel is inner rotating as it is here. So this is a 42 millimeter watch, 15 millimeters thick. It's a little bit on the thick side, and it looks kind of thick because the curved lugs, the lugs curve really quickly on the watch. So if you have a small wrist, you should be able to wear this watch comfortably. The curved lugs will wrap around your wrist nicely. The case is brushed all the way around, and has it seems almost like different levels of brushing, some more fine, some a little more coarse. I like the fact that it's an entirely brushed case, because this is a watch you want to really put into good use. And if it's going to be an everyday kind of watch, a dive watch, you want something that can take on those scratches without really beating up some polished surfaces. So I like the brushed case. The screw down crown at 4 o'clock, is a sine crown. This is the traditional pull it to the first setting for your date function, and then the second setting for your time. The time turns very smoothly on this and very quickly, so you can get around 12 hours pretty quickly turning the crown. Also, you'll see the waterproofing has increased on this one to 600 feet versus 500 in the old version, which translates to 180 meters over the previous 150 meters. Also on the back side, you have a mineral crystal case back. So it's an exhibition case back, allows you to see the movement. So evidently they've done some testing, and you can have a nice mineral crystal see-through case back and still get the kind of waterproofing that you hope for in a dive watch. This is a beautiful case. It has beautiful scripting on the back. It has good information there and beautifully done, neatly done. Stainless steel, water resistant, sapphire. It has the model number and the words automatic movement on the case back. Now let's take a look at the bezel. I have to argue that the bezel is indeed the most interesting part of this watch. Now Spinnaker has some beautiful models with an external bezel that really are attractive and worth taking a look at. But this one's that vintage vibe of that compressor style case with the inner bezel, inner rotating bezel, and this is bi-directional. And it turns very, very smoothly. In fact, I would say this could be the one drawback of the watch, is that it turns so smoothly that if my wrist bumps up against that crown, it will turn the bezel. So there's a couple of times throughout the day, and I've worn this watch every day for about a week now. This watch, I'll look down and see the bezel at a different location than in 12 o'clock. So you have to be careful of that. But it's really the design of the bezel itself that looks so amazing. The bezel numbers and the bezel markers all are raised and sort of give us this nice three-dimensional look. And I really just think it's absolutely beautiful. It's what sets this watch apart. You know, I think a lot of microbrands struggle with not copying too much of previous designs, and then not going to the other extreme where you're coming up with something so new that none of us recognize it or like it. So you had to strike that nice balance. And while this is a vintage style watch, a lot of very traditional features of the watch, of a dive watch here, you got this unique bezel. And the bezel really is what makes this probably its most modern contribution to the watch. And now let's take a look at the dial. And the dial is again another strength of this watch because it's easily laid out. It's very easy to read. Its luminescence is really good, so excellent lume on this watch. And I'll offer you a lume shot here so that you can see it doesn't just light up the hour markers, it lights up the bezel itself. So it really does look nice. The logo, I think, is really well done, and I think that's the challenge of many micro brands, is coming up with a logo that looks classic enough to go on a dial, and really this does. You know, for a word so large as Spinnaker, it really could overtake the dial, but just the way it's done, the script is nice, the three dimensions of the applied logo really look nice. And I would just say that Spinnaker, you've done an excellent job of finding the right logo, and I hope that, unlike other growing micro brands, you won't change your logo every few years, that you'll stick with this because I think it really does look nice on the dial. Also down in the dial you see the word automatic with this splash of color on the depth reading, the 600 foot. And that splash of color is matched with the second hand with the orange lollipop tip there. You'll see the applied baton markers around the hour markers. These are beautifully applied and plenty of lume to give it a really nice visibility in low light. The hands themselves are very coarsely brushed. I probably would have preferred a little more fine brushing on the hands. But one good part about the coarse brushing is that you have a lot of texture on the hand, so this is grabbing light at no matter what angle you look at it in. So again, that just contributes to the legibility of this watch. What's interesting too is the lume color here is a greenish tint to it. And so this particular edition with the black leather strap has that green luminescence. If you buy the edition, I think it's the 05, then it's got the tan leather strap. It has the cream colored luminescence on more that vintage vibe. And I probably prefer the cream over the greenish color, but I think on this particular dial it really goes well with the blue. And so let's talk about that blue dial. It's a radiant dial, sunburst dial, and this watch, it's very tricky to the eye. Because when I first pulled it out of the box, I thought for the first 5 minutes that I had been sent a black dial instead of the blue. And I really had preferred the blue. I was hoping to get the blue. And it was only after I had it on the wrist and kind of went outside, and when the sun hit the dial, that blue just came alive. So it's a very subtle effect. So for most of the time, it's going to look as if you have a black dial on the wrist. But then once you get into a well-lit room, or you're outside where the light is bright and the light hits that dial, then it's really going to come to life. So there are times where the blue really just emerges, and it's a really cool effect. I think that it's subtle most times, and then there's this pop of color that just surprises you. And of course we have a date window at 3 o'clock. I love a date window on a watch, and I think this one's well done. I appreciate the black background and the white lettering, so and the centered date. It's right in the center of that date window. Then of course let's move on to the crystal. The crystal on this watch is really quite impressive. You know, I usually don't pay a lot of attention to a crystal, but this is a very flat crystal, but it has this slight dome edge, and this domed edge really lines up perfectly with the curvature of the bezel, and so it really does have a nice look. Now this crystal does extend above the case and above the bezel, so it's protruding a little bit. I hear folks complain about that, about other watches. I personally don't have any problem with that. It doesn't stick far out enough that it's you know, typically a hazard. And you have to remember, a crystal, a sapphire crystal, is actually a harder surface than the actual stainless steel case itself. So I don't have any problems with that protruding out just a little bit. In fact, I think it gives it a nice look, because this gives the edge of the watch this really nice, you know, slight distortion like you would find on a vintage piece. It kind of works like almost like an acrylic crystal. It just has a gorgeous effect. In fact, when you look online at Spinnaker's photographs of this watch, you're going to see this sort of milky ring around the outside. That actually doesn't exist on the watch in real life. In real life, you see the bezel very clearly. There's no white milky ring around it. In fact, what you do see is sort of a blue haze that comes around the edge, the blue accent color, and that's from the anti-reflective coating, which this watch does have. And so really, I really think the biggest surprise of this watch for me is the crystal. I think it's just really well done. And now let's talk about the movement. If we turn the watch over and look at the back, we look through the exhibition case back, what you're going to find back there is a Seiko Japanese movement, the NH35. This has hand winding and hacking. It's a 24 jewel movement. This is the movement that really should have been in the SKX. I can't imagine why Seiko makes such an iconic watch without hacking and hand winding. So this is a step up from, I think, the Seiko SKX in terms of functionality. It really is a reliable movement. I've had this movement on other watches and have gotten very good performance. The winding of this watch is very smooth. When you turn the crown, the NH35 is probably one of the smoothest turning crowns and movements I've ever turned. This has a 41-hour power reserve. The movement is visible through the exhibition case back, which is a mineral crystal, and I know that now because I've already scratched it a little bit. Mineral crystals are so easy to do that way. But you have this lovely decorated motor, and really well signed on the back. And what I appreciate about this watch is the rotor is very, very quiet. You know, I have some 6R15 Seikos that have the noisiest rotor in the world on them. And so I'm really pleased that this one is just so well made. And it's just it's just a workhorse of a movement that's really appropriate for a dive watch. Now this particular one is running about 6 or 7 seconds slow per day. Of course, you know, most of us wish that it would be 6 or 7 seconds fast per day. This is probably not a regulated movement. If I look on the back, you'll see the regulating lever is a little bit to the slower side. Normally, I would just crack this case open and adjust that, but given that it's a dive watch, I really don't want to compromise the water resistance on this watch, so we're just going to leave it as is. I've stopped fretting over that over the years, and it's real simple. You just set this thing a minute fast once a week and you're good to go. You don't even have to check for the accuracy of this watch. It will be just fine without worrying about it. So finally, let's look at the strap. You know, this is interesting that a dive watch would not come with a stainless steel bracelet. I imagine that's quite an investment for a microbrand to do something like that. So what you get is this quite robust, very thick leather strap that really is well made. It's definitely has more of a processed leather. It's not a porous looking leather. The idea is that you're able to take this strap into the water and then just let it dry and it will be just fine. It's actually been raining all weekend here, and I left the watch out in the rain for a while just to photograph it and just kind of see how the strap handles the water, and it handled it just fine. No problems at all. So I wouldn't worry about the strap on this. It has nice rubberized edges, so the sides are sealed, and again, I find it to be quite stiff and tightly packed leather and very non-porous, if that's possible. What I love about this watch too is it looks good on a number of straps. So if you're not going to have the bracelet option, there's a number of straps that they offer that look fantastic. And of course, anybody who loves watches probably has a pile of 20mm straps, and I've tried a half a dozen of them already on this watch, and they look really good. So this watch really changes character with the different straps. So this is a watch that really can enjoy a lot of strap changes. So I'm going to give this a highly recommend rating. I think for a micro brand, again, it's so difficult to get started in the watch world. And if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. They have done it right. All the fundamentals of a good watch are here. It's a really good design. It's got some innovation here, I think, with the raised numerals on the bezel, the raised markers on the bezel. Case is well designed, well built. It's great to have this level of water resistance for a micro brand watch. If you like the look of this watch, if you're one that is interested in micro brands, I can safely say this is not a micro brand you have to be concerned about. So I think you would do well to own one of these. Well, that's my recommendation for you today. Take a look at the Spinnaker Bradner and take a look at spinnaker-watches.com for more of their offerings. And I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll leave it at that. So have a great day.